Okay, so I know a lot of you guys didn't come here for politics. I'm actually here to talk about the subject of UFOs and aliens. If you've been following the show, you know this is a subject that we've been discussing since the onset of the show. It's a position that we've always taken kind of almost for granted that, yeah, they're here. I mean, it's almost obvious to the person who's gone through the proper research, if you're open to the information that you're looking at and you're not so cynical or skeptical to believe that everybody's just lying to you. So this show has always taken that position, and we've gone so far as to actually uncover documents from the CIA website that I think drives at the point of this show, because what I wanted to discuss was a question that Joe Rogan came up with. Now, what I like so much about Joe Rogan is I take him as a very open-minded individual. So he used to be, all into this moon landing conspiracy. And then I think he believed, meaning he didn't believe that we actually landed on the moon at a certain point. And then I think when he realized that that conspiracy was off, having that conspiracy correlated with his own understanding of UFOs, I think he kind of tuned off a lot of the conspiracy theories. And at a certain point was not believing in UFOs. But and this is actually to my surprise, in this clip, it seems that he's kind of back into the ufology boat. So what I wanted to showcase was a clip between Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore, who's another internet personality that I actually admire greatly. I thought this was an interesting conversation because I actually think that there's information that we've brought up in the show that can contribute to this conversation. So let's just go ahead and listen in for a second.
Neither of us are going to figure anything out, right? We're not that guy that they're going to call on. If there's a real issue, we need Jimmy Dore.
No, but that's the thing, Joe, about my whole show is that someone as dumb as me can see through this stuff. I can put it together. Oh, we're going to admit that we have UFOs, and now we're going to have a space bar. Okay, I can put that together. That's the whole thing. It's like if
just to quickly put things into context. Before in the episode, they were talking about. They're referencing UFOs in general, and so specifically he believes that Trump is, because everything that he does has a business sense, or everything has somehow a benefit towards himself. He believes that the whole idea of bringing up UFOs at this exact moment, he was mentioning earlier that UFOs have been brought up by fighter pilots for a while now, but it's only now that they're suddenly showcasing, and Jimmy Dore believes that there's a reason behind this overall. So I just need to give that quick background.
I can do this. I know they can do this. They're just not doing it.
I think the UFO thing is, I know you're probably right in terms of like one of the reasons why they released it, but I think there's also this, when you get a bunch of like really credible people like that Commander Fravor guy, when you get actual data like radar, you actually can look at the video.
Commander Fravor was the guy with glasses that appeared in the New York Times and was saying that he was the one who observed and chased the tic-tac UFO, just to put that into context.
Of the infrared camera of them tracking that thing. There's enough of those now that people are like, well, what the fuck is going on? And
that surprised me that he said that.
Have all this money and all this equipment. Is this something that the Chinese are doing or the Russians are doing, or is this something that you can't explain? And I think we're in this area where there's so much information. People can get a hold of so many videos and so much stuff that they kind of have to start talking about it now.
Okay, I see how they shut down conversations around the most innocuous of inquiries. So
that's true too.
They can say shame.
So you see Jimmy Dore, it almost seems like he doesn't want to believe in UFOs, even though part of Joe Rogan's point is that the information is open. It's transparent. You can go to the CIA website like I did and actually discover documents that will prove certain ideas related to ufology that seem to indicate that there's something very weird going on. There's aliens or whatever, crafts. I don't know what you call it,
Pretty hard.
Yeah. That's true too. But when you got a guy who's like a decorated pilot like Fravor, and he's like, look, I don't have any other crazy stories in my past. Like, he's not a crazy guy. He's a pretty rock solid, general, all around American hero type guy. And he's like, look, I'll tell you what I fucking saw, and it's pretty crazy.
Well, those pilots though, they live a crazy life, don't they?
Well, they have to.
See, he's kind of getting off topic a little bit. He doesn't really want to address the idea that they're real because it probably confronts something. Well, who knows? I can't speculate to that point, but that's
to go faster than the speed of sound. Oh, Sex at Dawn with the book.
Yeah.
Look, Chris is a good friend of mine. I think there's some of the things that Chris looks at. Like, Chris is kind of a freak. He wants things to be a little on the freaky side. Okay. You know, but the idea about the pilots is that they all wife
swapping
because they think they could die at any moment, and the idea
create
is,
this bond.
Yes, yeah, they want someone to love their wife as much as they do, or maybe they want to fuck their buddy's wife and they're all doing coke. But I think there's also this. When you get a bunch of like really credible people like that Commander Fravor guy, when you get actual data like radar, you actually can look at the video of the infrared camera of them tracking that thing. There's enough of those now that people are like, well, what the fuck is going on? And if you guys have all this money and all this equipment, is this something that the Chinese are doing or the Russians are doing, or is this something that you can't explain? And I think we're in this area where there's so much information. People can get a hold of so many videos and so much stuff that...
So I wanted to go back to this question because he's asking about, is this that something that the Chinese is doing it? And, you know, earlier he was referencing that they did that. The reason why we're doing this, the reason why UFOs are being brought up right now is because of the Chinese. And he's right. There is... You know, this is something that we actually reported on earlier, that the Chinese were essentially the reason that was given to the patent officer, because we did an episode about a Navy UFO patent, and this was basically a patent about this anti-gravity craft that, you know, looked like a typical UFO. And when you read the actual abstract and you read how the engineering, how it's supposed to work, it uses counter-rotating electromagnetic forces, which was kind of interesting to me because this is the same principle that I had read in Michio Kaku's book, Physics of the Impossible, when he was described how he would theorize that a future society would eventually be able to create anti-gravity crafts. So basically this patent, that's a real patent that shows a UFO, is describing the same physics that is being theorized by one of the most notable physicists that we have. So that's kind of weird to me. That was very strange. But in the abstract of this particular patent, it describes that the patent officer, in trying to convince that the patent was real, had actually had to tell them that the Chinese were making similar crafts. And that, yes, this patent should be taken seriously. And so I guess to say that the Chinese are inspiring this wave of revelation, that could be possible. Now, what I'm personally taking out of this is that while UFOs was once a necessary secret, well, that becomes difficult when you have other nations catching up in certain technological progress that mimics the exotic technologies that has not just been present in modern times, but has been present in Renaissance times, in the times of cowboys, long enough that we know that this type of technology couldn't have just been government. It was also inspired by likely other species, people who had knowledge that we didn't have at the time. At least that's the premise that this show has taken. So when another nation catches up technologically to the actual technology that you're trying to hide, well, then it's time to start unveiling. And I think that's the real reason why this UFO knowledge is coming out. Whereas Jimmy Dore is believing this more prosaic, like, oh, it's just because Trump is benefiting himself and he wants to get a space program out. And I want to put out this one last clip to show you what I mean.
Reports that pilots see this stuff all the time, but they never confirmed it. And my question was, why now?
Brought it up to the top of the food chain, but it wasn't something that got distributed to everybody until he saw it. When he saw it, he was like, what in the fuck am I looking at here? and they're like, well, yeah, we've been seeing these things, and this thing with no active propulsion system that you could recognize. There was nothing around, no fire coming out of it, nothing around, and it would just disappear, just take off at an insane race of speed, and actively jamming the radar.
So when I covered this on my show, I said, now, I've heard reports that pilots see this stuff all the time, but they never confirmed it. And my question was, why now? Why would the Air Force be confirming that they saw UFOs now? Because again, like there have been reports that pilots have seen this stuff forever. And I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying, why are they admitting it happened now? And then, of course, you see in this last defense budget, they put in money for a Space Force.
I think the money for the Space Force, though, isn't that because China is able to...
That's what they say.
Yeah,
whatever they can do to make sure we want to spend more money, that's what they'll do.
So you see what I'm saying? Like, so it is about China. Jimmy Dore is taking like a more prosaic approach. He just thinks that there's no other reason why it shouldn't have come out earlier, but there could be a technological reason, as we were saying.
Hey, we saw UFO. Hey, China. Hey, look over there. We got to spend more money.
That's what it is. That's why they're admitting it. But Fravor, I guarantee you, isn't in that.
No, I guarantee he saw it. No, they're just now. But before they would say that's not true. The Air Force would go, we don't acknowledge that, and now they're going to acknowledge it.
Right. You're probably right. There's probably something to that. That it's just about budgets, and that's, I don't want to be that cynical when it comes to something like that.
Really? That's cynical?
Yeah. I want to think that...
Come on, that's not cynical. That's 2 plus 2.
It is, you're right. But
okay.
It's also cynical.
Jeremy,
the only reason why they're telling us is because of budgets. It's both things.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So basically that's the last clip I want to show you. The reason why I want to show you is because Jimmy Dore believes it's 2 plus 2. Well, like I said, part of Jimmy Dore's point is that, hey, my show is so obvious that anybody can get it. Well, we kind of tried to make the same point about our show. This information is so obvious, anybody can essentially find it. And look, we went to the CIA website, we found this document, and if you haven't seen this before, it's really interesting because what this document is essentially indicating, we transcribed it, it's about 57 pages. On page 11, it explicitly says when the Air Force is trying to obtain information from the CIA because the Air Force was about to conduct what is called the Condon Report, which essentially became, I don't know how to say it, maybe like the Bible of the UFO skeptics, where they claim, oh, the government definitely did a study on this. Well, that study was not a complete study because the Air Force was asking for information from the CIA about a specific panel that was supposed to be a scientific panel to study the wave of UFOs that happened in 1952 over the White House. That panel, called the Robertson's panel, well, the CIA was not providing the Air Force all the information. So on page 11, the CIA finally admits why they're not giving the Air Force the information, thus making the Condon Report not the scientific study it claims it is. But here is the reason.
We are most anxious that further publicity not be given to the information that the panel was sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency. Further, we cannot authorize the listing of personnel participating in the discussions in any unclassified releases.
So go for it. Grab that document, Jimmy Dore. It's really easy. You just go to the CIA website, and then you just have to have an open heart to the idea that maybe this information is actually real. Maybe there is something beyond just the Space Force. Maybe there are other reasons why this is coming out now than just, it's bad orange men, so to speak. Not to say that orange man is perfect. I'm not saying that, otherwise we wouldn't talk so well about Tulsi Gabbard. But what I'm trying to say is not everything is about Trump. That's all. Thank you so much for listening. This is Felipe Osorio, signing out.
And Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Bill Clinton and the Democratic Party are just as full of shit as Trump could ever fucking be. That's why.